Here's a question for you. What goes into launching one of the most recognized car brands in the world's third largest car market, battling through tariffs, compliance, as well as regulatory hurdles?
So I was going back in the flight and there happened to be a cricketer on that flight. He was also discussing Tesla. It was sort of Ganguly actually. I don't need to gatekeep this. I've never seen a country of 1.4 billion people talk about one thing so unanimously.
I'm Naman Pandey. This is the Ready Set Do podcast, and in this episode, my guest is Supratik Saha. Supra is a staff program manager at Tesla and the finance lead for new markets expansions. Supra worked directly on the financial side of the house when it came to the Tesla launch in India in July 2025. And in this chat, he takes us through his journey through getting his master's degree in France, the work culture in Europe, and no, not always Augusts are off completely, how he ended up at Tesla in the Netherlands, and of course his experiences on the ground when the actual launch was happening in Mumbai.
I don't want to sugarcoat it, but France, Spain, it's a bit tricky. Most of the jobs need local language.
How would you describe what transformation is, having done that for such a long time in your career? In line with our theme of learning from high agency individuals who are just a few steps ahead, my goal with this episode is to spotlight how a master's in Europe can set your career up for success with intersecting disciplines like transformation and finance.
I could have stayed in France and got a citizenship. That was something that was never that motivating for me because I feel like
Subscribe on YouTube and any of your favorite podcast apps for weekly episodes featuring high agency individuals and daily clips from those episodes on YouTube and Instagram. And now, without any further ado, here's Supra. Welcome to the only podcast in the world featuring stories of high agency individuals who are just a few steps ahead of us. Supratik, welcome.
Thank you so much, Naman. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this. I'm super psyched to be here, and yeah, hopefully it's going to be a fun chat, right?
I think so, and I know you go by Supra, so that's what I'll be referring to you from this point. And obviously, like you said, really excited to jump into all of the cool Tesla stuff, right? I'm just buzzing to know about how all of that works behind the scenes, how you pulled off such a huge launch. But before we get there, I do want to start off, a little further back down the road, if you will. And I'm just trying to explore what your journey was like, obviously, to get to this point. And then I know that we have in common the fact that we're both international students. We both, after our undergrads, moved to countries that were not India to pursue our masters. And obviously, because I went to the US, and I think just from what I've heard from my peers and such, Europe has a very different, almost just some preconceived notions and such around how stuff works in Europe. And I'm actually, not at all aware of like how the master's curriculum is structured, what someone's experience might be like. So can you speak to a little bit about your master's experience in Europe, what you studied, where you went, and just what was it like for you overall?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it was really fun to kind of also connect our nodes, right? I mean, you're from Calcutta, I'm also originally from Calcutta in India.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was super cool. But yeah, I mean, I think the to start off with the journey, right? I did my mechanical engineering in VIT University in India. I joined mechanical I went to went first day in the university and I just realized that I'm not that big of a fan of engineering
Oh
right
no.
from the get-go. Yeah. And yeah, I was just like super focused at that point to just kind of finish that as soon as possible so that I could pursue other things because like giving up was essentially not an option because you lose a year. And
Mhm.
that's pretty significant at like 17 and 18. Some people obviously have great reasons to do that, but I was just not in that state of mind, right? And yeah, so I finished my engineering as quickly as possible. So in VIT we got the opportunity to like take more subjects in
Mhm.
a semester and kind of get done with it. So yeah, I finished it in 3.5 years, and then
Oh
I
wow.
wanted to just yeah, that was
Interesting. I didn't
that
know
was a
that.
journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And
It
then
it was tricky. It was tricky.
right, I can
Um,
imagine, yeah, because I do
yeah.
remember my last semester being they had like a big co-op component, right? But there were still other subjects, so that's actually really cool that you didn't even, yeah, that you wanted to get done with it so quickly that you were like, I'm out.
But yeah, VIT was a challenge. It's super tough. It was a journey. I remember the first semester I joined VIT and I had chicken pox right before the exam.
Oh
So
no.
I essentially
That's
missed
tough.
I missed the first semester, all my exams. Um, so yeah, it was a journey. I think that kind of also made me into the person I am. Kind of laid a good groundwork for all the future
Yeah,
issues and then hurdles that you face.
yeah. Character
Uh,
development, as they
yep,
say, right?
yep. It's yeah. It was like looking back, it was a very strategic decision, right? So like
Okay.
obviously a lot of my friends were going to the US. I was looking at US.
Hmm.
I was kind of evaluating like cost, post-study visa option, and then ROI, right? In hindsight, I was doing that. At that point, I think it was more like a jumbled sort of notion. But yeah, so US was a bit too expensive, and the way I see people leaving India to go to the US is like high risk, high reward, right?
True, true.
Um,
Definitely.
yeah, it's like you put in more and with the promise that you will get in more. Like wealth creation is till date, I think, the highest in the US compared to
Yeah.
anywhere else in the world, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I saw US as high risk, high reward. UK wasn't really an option because they had
Okay.
very unfavorable post study visa options at that point, and hence I was looking at France. um, and yeah, so my university was pretty well ranked. The course I did was 16th in the world. They were
Wow.
giving me a good scholarship, and they had pretty good post study visa options.
Okay.
So
And what school and course was this? Just for our listeners.
yeah, sure. So the school is EDEC Business School.
Hmm.
It's one of the what they call the Grande École in France.
Okay.
And the course was Masters in Strategy, Consulting, and Digital Transformation. So
Nice.
something that I
Gotcha.
was also kind of looking at. I necessarily did not want to spend 3 more years after studying for 3.5 or 4 years again. I
Hmm.
really wanted to get back into the business world. That
Hmm.
I found that calling in Mumbai, and
Right.
yeah, so that was it. That was France. Was was a journey. Like it kind of yeah, it was really cool to be in France, but then
Hmm.
there were significant challenges that came in later. But maybe we can go into
Hmm.
that later. But
Yeah.
I yeah, sure.
Yeah. Up next, I'm trying to curious about what maybe if you can go over. Obviously, it sounds like you had such a nice experience there, but maybe a couple courses or any random anecdotes in terms of things that stuck with you that you really enjoyed. So, just for context, I studied engineering management. So,
Mhm.
for how that works is you get, and you're maybe familiar, but just for our listeners,
Yeah.
you get half of your credits from the engineering school, and the other half come from the business school, right?
Oh, cool. I
So,
didn't know that actually. Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's kind of that was one of my biggest reasons for doing that because similar to you, I was also kind of over engineering a little bit. So I was just at PwC. I was just
Okay.
writing code. I was a software consultant. I forget the exact title. It's funny, just how
Time.
time
Yeah.
flies. Yeah, and it's just not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was doing that, and then I was like, yeah, this is great, but I want like a bigger picture, right? I want to have a more bird's eye view of what the work is and where I fit in. So that's why I went for that, and we had this course that was called strategic management, and it was just basically like I don't know 16 case studies non-stop. Every class was just a case study. You had to read the case before you showed up to class, and the class was just a discussion around what the case was. And it just blew my mind because I had never ever experienced something like that. I was like, what is going on? How is this? Yeah, why am I getting credits for this? And it was just
Yeah.
insane because I just enjoyed it so much. So, did you have any experience or any courses or any anecdotes that you think back to fondly during your masters?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I mean, I think firstly that's super fascinating. Like to do half your stuff. Like it's because like engineering, I feel like gives you the lateral intelligence to kind of go out and do pretty much anything that you want. Um, but yeah, my course, I think I just never had a school where like essentially collaborating was the main key thing
Yeah.
that you need to do to be able to get credits. So that's
Okay.
like it was pretty much central in all of the courses that I like all the courses that we had. Pretty
Hmm.
much all of them were like group projects, and what really like was very refreshing for me is like, for example, like if there was one course where we had to do like plan the strategy 3 to 5 years of
Mhm.
FMCG companies, right? And we could like the universe, like FMCG companies is essentially all products around us in general.
Yeah.
So the
Hmm.
universe is firstly uh, like endless, and then there's no one right answer, right? So
Hmm.
that was something super interesting to me after like only being educated in India, to go to a place where you get the feel that uh, there's not one right answer to certain
Exactly.
things, right? And
That's such a good call out. Yep. And
yeah,
as long as you can back your answer up right, you will
exactly.
get credits for that, and that's all that matters. And funny, that's how the real life works. So,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, true,
definitely
true.
also a fan of that. Yeah. But sorry, didn't mean
Yeah,
to cut you
no,
off.
no, no. I mean, yeah, I'm just looking back and thinking about it for the first time.
Hmm.
I think that was the most refreshing part, and it was pretty much central to everything that we were doing. And the other thing is like also like certain things which I feel when you're at uni you don't get to grasp the importance of. And I, looking back at VIT and at edec,
Hmm.
I'll just give a couple of examples. Like,
Yeah, please.
yeah, like some people were working on solar stuff, like solar projects as their final year project in VIT. And then, for example, I was working on digital transformation in the traditional banking sector as my final thesis in edec. uh, these things at that point were would be considered as projects, whereas now they're pretty much like full blown companies. Like there's so many
Interesting.
um,
Interesting.
companies at this space. the
True.
the digital
Yeah.
transformation of traditional banking like Revolut and companies like Monzo,
Hmm.
they're brilliant in terms of like they have just created a new sector. And
Hmm.
I probably never realized that when I was working on that. We were probably learning the same thing. So
Mm.
yeah, and also like the people who were doing it. Like now I see brilliant people from my universities doing like 0 to 1 things
Uh-huh.
that are insane. I think that's sometimes, at least for me personally, I didn't get to grasp that it was
Mm.
happening in real time when I was in uni.
So I guess from that, can you walk us through how like employment works, especially if you're an international student, and then kind of walk us through essentially kind of how you ended up at Tesla?
Yeah, sure. I feel like you kind of like you kind of get to know the real world after you're outside university.
Uh-huh.
Um, so for me,
Definitely.
yeah, right. I mean, I think, yeah, for you probably also it would have been the same, right? Like when you went to Chicago, I guess.
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
100%. Yep.
yeah. So for me, like going to France, what I didn't realize was the importance of knowing French. Like what you have to understand is like EU is essentially a fragmented landmass of different countries, different culture.
Hmm.
Historically, they have always been fighting, and it's been very recent in terms of like the history in the very recent past that they have actually come together, right? There's the language, especially in France, is it plays a very big role. When I was in uni, I was super protected. Like everyone spoke English in the university. The teachers or were communicating only in English. We did face some challenges when we went out,
Hmm.
but y- again, you're in a protected environment. You don't really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Um, when it came to like the actual job search, unlike in India, and I'm sure it's the same thing in the US. There's no like recruitment drives happening where there's mass recruitment. Yeah, it's all you, right? And yeah, that was super challenging. Like to get the first job, even though you went to the best university as an international student who did not speak French, was super tricky. I must have like sent out 400 to 500, maybe even more applications just to land my first job. And that was a real wake up call. And when I did land my first job, like I would get first round interviews. We would go through the entire process, and then there'd be like, no, we need French, like we need
Okay.
fluent French for this role. Um, so it wouldn't work out. So that was a really tricky process. So my suggestion to people coming in to France or like in Europe in general is to be mindful of that. Either you have to know the language, or you have to be willing to learn the language, the local language, right? um Yeah, Netherlands, where I'm currently based out of, is a bit different. It's very, like, English is widely spoken. All the jobs mostly are in English, so that is super refreshing for me. But also to a certain extent Germany. But I think till date, I don't want to sugarcoat it, but like till date, France, Spain, it's a bit tricky. Most of the jobs are need local language, and it makes sense, right? Because like jobs are about communicating. Like
Right,
it's 50% communication in general, right? So
for
you need
sure.
to have, yeah, yeah. So
And
that
so
was
just a
a wake
quick
up call.
follow up. Yeah, just a
Sure.
quick follow up on that. Obviously, so because and how long was your course firstly? Like how long was it at your master's?
Yeah, it was 1.5 years actually.
Got it.
Yeah,
So you were probably starting to, or like you were probably practicing or trying to learn French this whole time, right?
yeah,
Or is that not true? You were
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
A-
we like, the good thing that the uni does, I think all of the do in France, is they start you off in India. Like you do the A1.1 in India right away. So I did
Okay,
A1.1 in French in India, and then I moved there, and then yeah.
got it. And then you continued to learn for 1.5 years, and you're trying to tell me that it was still so hard in the interviews, and it just wasn't enough. Is that right?
Yeah, it
Like
wasn't
that's the
it.
amount of proficiency that they need. Like you need to actually be fluent, and just like
Yeah,
broken passing of French is usually not enough.
no, no, like I think there's two categories of jobs. Most of the jobs fall in the category where you need to be fluent in French,
Mm,
and then there's a small sliver of jobs which are, you need to be okay in French and good in English, and you can get away with it. The problem is all the international students are competing to get that sliver
right,
of the
right, right.
jobs, right? Uh,
Mm,
so that's the tricky bit. And to be
fascinating.
honest with you, like I was, so I managed to get my first job. I moved over to the second one, and I was in France for 4.5 years. So I was obviously speaking French, but I still felt that it was a bit difficult for me to integrate into the society, just
Interesting.
because of the language. So I think it's something real that people need to be wary of.
Mm,
But on the other hand, I know people who really wanted to learn French as well, right? And they kind of started the journey ahead in time, learned French, excelled by the time they were in uni, got pretty much the most lucrative jobs that they wanted, essentially. So that's also a possibility. I don't want to discourage people as well, you know.
yeah, I appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing both sides. And I am curious about what you said that you felt it was difficult for you to integrate into the French society, mostly because of the language. Excuse me. Now, how does that work exactly? Like, maybe do you have an example? Like, obviously, I can think of how that would work, where maybe you're at, I don't know, like a restaurant and you order something which is not in French and you get like a funny look. Is it something like that, or is it more nefarious or more malicious than that?
I think it's you would imagine it would be something more malicious or nefarious, but actually I think it's more innocent. That's the good part.
Okay.
It does not necessarily translate to something bad. It's just how human beings work, you know. Like
Hmm.
if you go out to a bar with French speaking people, after a couple of drinks they'll just naturally move on to French. Like that's how
Obviously, yeah.
human beings work. That's their, base level of communication, right? So that's where it becomes a bit tough. Like, and for you as an individual, your base level of communication on the other hand is probably English or something else. So that's where I felt the gap was happening,
Mhm.
like socially. um, yeah. That's coming from outside the country. It's so tough to judge that because we necessarily have not felt that in our own
E-
country.
Ever, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, maybe some places in the south, right? Sometimes you would
yeah,
know you've been to
yeah,
VIT,
yeah, yeah,
but not as much. And I feel like even that is, from what I see or hear at least, is becoming more prevalent now. I don't think it usually used to be a problem around the time we were in undergrad, I would say. At least
yeah,
personally. And I was in Bangalore, I at least definitely did not have any, like bad experiences about like language and such. But yeah, definitely what you said around defaulting to one's base, obviously that's completely justified, I feel. right. Yeah, it's just a comfort thing, right? You just want to
Yeah.
be feel comfortable. And then, so from there, so you mentioned you had a couple jobs in France, and then, so did the Tesla job bring you to the Netherlands? Is that what got you there?
Yeah, yeah. Essentially, I mean, I was there for with in a company called Score SE. They're the fourth largest reinsurer in the world. Before I left for Tesla, it was a super cool job. Like I was working very close. I can speak more freely about this company because I'm not with them anymore. But yeah, I was working for the deputy COO and the CEO. I was very lucky to be. This is all luck. This is, I think, is pure luck, and yeah, it's like, what is it? 99% perspiration, 1% luck, or something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was that. So I really got to see, like, it was super finance heavy, and I really got to see like how leaders, like I started to see how leaders think in organizations. I was there for 2.5, no, almost 3 years, uh,
Nice.
and I felt that, yeah, it was time for a change. I could have essentially stayed in France and got the citizenship. That was something that was never really that motivating for me, because I feel like if you really want to be somewhere, and if you have the skills, people will kind of let you be there. Like companies will hire you in a given space.
True.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much all the call that all internationals going to US are 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 believing, right? Like they know that we will develop the skills to be able to get hired, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like that's the plan anyway. And
yeah,
then obviously there's then just other factors, right? Just like the market and such, which obviously no one can control.
yeah,
And obviously sometimes even political environments sometimes can be not conducive
yeah.
to internationals. But yeah, irrespective. And then, so for the Tesla offer or like that job, did you just like normally apply, maybe with like a referral or something, and then just interview? Is that how it works, or is it something more different than that?
No, no, it was again. It was. I think. I think. Yeah, it was luck, and yeah, and then to a certain extent, hard work. I applied. We interviewed, and we got in. I'm super grateful for the people who hired me into the team that they hired me. I mean, looking back, I think subconsciously I always wanted to be parts, or like, the way I see it is that, like, the job that you have is basically you giving 8 hours or more per day to solving a specific domain of problems, right? um, and how I saw when I was like applying for Tesla, and Tesla in general, is that like these are the problems I would want to solve. So I was super lucky to kind of um, yeah, have the faith in me to get in. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what was the job exactly? Like, what is it that you were doing, at least when you started? If you're still doing the same thing, then obviously that. But yeah, what was the like job description?
Yeah, I think so. I started as a senior program manager. Then then last year I got promoted to staff program manager. So
Mhm.
yeah, essentially like managing large finance projects that need to be kind of dealt with. A lot of mostly like cross-functional stuff, which I really enjoy, impacting like multiple teams. Always sitting between, like, I think historically in my career I've always sat between somewhere between the technical and the business. That's what I
Nice.
enjoy, like being able to see both sides of things. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, and it was similar. It was pretty much that. And then over a period of time, I think like I added the scope of like looking into the finance aspects of the finance setup for new market entries.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, but yep, essentially it was pretty much that. Uh, uh, and
And then, so obviously, because you said your degree was somewhat related, right? Because you said it was in strategic and something and
yeah.
transformation. Sorry, what was it? Strategic?
strategy, consulting, and digital transformation.
Strategy.
It's
Okay, there you
it's
go.
like a
Yeah.
song. You go. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So my current job is actually that also of a transformation analyst, right? So and again, I'm obviously sensing a lot of parallels even with the engineering management degree and all of this. So one of the questions that I get often, that honestly, admittedly, I struggle with a little bit, is what is transformation, right? And this is not like an interviewer asking, this is just some friend that's like, okay, great, this is your job, but what is it? Like, what do you do? And
Yeah.
just I don't know if if I've nailed down like the 90-second elevator pitch or whatever. In an ideal world, that would be 30 seconds. Just because of it, like not everybody needs to. I don't need to talk somebody's ear off of what I do, which is not the most, according to me, glamorous thing in the world. But without any obviously time restrictions here, I am curious to pick your brain on how would you describe what transformation is, having done that for such a long time in your career, and also obviously because of your master's degree in that as well.
Yeah. Sure. I think the way to answer you frankly, like I don't know what it means to be honest with you. The way I see my job in general, like I was saying, right, it's like I mean, I see projects as problems, right? It's like there's a problem, you kind of mobilize people to solve that problem. You can't call a problem, you can't like mobilize people behind like just naming a problem, right? You have to call it
Hmm.
something a bit more directive and informative and a bit more actionable, and that's a project, right? um, so the way I see it is like it's just a bunch of projects to solve a bunch of problems that helps us get to the end state we want the organization as a whole to go towards. That's how I see. Uh, I kind of always break it down to like, okay, problem, how do we solve it? Yeah, what, why, and how.
I like
Uh,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that a lot, what you said about projects are just problems. I think that's a super straightforward idea to grasp for most people. So, yeah, I think I'm going to be using that
yeah,
more often from this point. So, thanks for sharing that. And then, yeah, obviously, coming back to the, Tesla stuff, obviously, the launch in India was such a huge deal, right? I think that's all I saw on Twitter for 2 days straight. Apparently, no one wanted to talk about anything else. And so, obviously, I understand that there's a lot of this that you're not supposed to talk about or would not be comfortable sharing. So, I completely understand. And obviously, especially want to thank you for, like, you know, being on here despite that. But obviously, having said all that, I am still itching to know what you can share about a launch like that. Like what sort of work has to go in behind the scenes. And I know you were more involved with the financial stuff, which is obviously one of the most important aspects of all of it, right? So, trying to not be too closed ended here because I don't know what you are at the liberty to discuss. But really, if you could paint a picture for us, kind of how the project first fell into your lap, and anything you can share about the actual behind the scenes work before the actual launch.
yeah, sure. I think so. Like you said, right? I cannot really go into specifics, so I'll try my best to kind of also paint the picture with what I can share. Obviously, a lot of that is probably a bit masked, but I will still try to give the best overview I possibly
Appreciate that.
can. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. No worries. Yeah, I think the f- the first thing that comes to my mind when I look at the India Lodge is the people, right? We literally, I mean, all market entries, as you can imagine, will impact a lot of cross-functional teams. And just to be clear, like the teams, I think that when I say the people, I think I was doing a very small part of the actual hard work. Like as everyone knows, right? Like India is India is 1.4 billion people. To govern 1.4 billion people, you need to have some very unique laws, regulations to attempt to keep people in checks and balances, keep things legal, keep things in a process as much as you
Right.
possibly
Keep,
can,
keep
right?
things compliant, right? Maybe.
To keep things compliant, exactly. So um, it's a beast when it comes to enabling international companies to work here compliantly, uh, and successfully, right? When you look at India, it's like it's massive, um, and that's why it was super interesting. I think the teams that were involved, they did so much hard work to make this happen. Yeah, that's what I can essentially say. Like, I'm super proud of
Makes sense.
the
Yeah.
team. Yeah, and I also feel like how I've seen India over the last 4 to 5 years. I don't know if you've seen this as well in the winters, especially, right? Like
Hmm.
with the whole smog situation that is there in
Right.
the cities. Uh, I feel like it wasn't I don't know. Maybe I'm actually, let's understand maybe your perspective over the last 5 years. Have you also like seen the deterioration in the air quality in particular?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, definitely I've seen that. What I'm not 100% sure about is if it just kind of always was there and I never noticed. Just a classic case of recency bias.
Yeah,
But of course, I've seen that. Yeah, I've been back a couple times. Once in December, once in October. Both times it was like very hard to look anywhere into the sky and actually see anything, because it was just like it's like a filter of just a light gray,
yeah,
which is not the nicest thing to look at. And obviously sometimes it makes my eyes itchy, makes my throat burn. So for sure, you're not the only one that has felt that, for sure.
yeah, and so I think that kind of gave me like a lot of motivation to work like it's subconsciously harder on this project, because it's a problem that I think needs to be solved. It's a problem that will get solved by various things, not just by Tesla being in the market, but it's
Hmm.
definitely one solution to a large problem, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
the way I think in terms of stats, obviously the air quality is much more geographic in nature, like with the stubble burning and vehicular emissions. But like cities like Calcutta, I think it's mostly vehicular emissions that cause the smog, and it's got long term effects, right? This
Yeah.
I feel like when I was a kid, um, it wasn't to this degree, for sure. It might be a bit of recency bias, like you were mentioning,
Hmm.
um,
No, I
but
think you're right, actually. I would agree with
yeah,
that. I can definitely think of some times where even in 2018, 2019, which was like the last time I was actually living in Calcutta, where sometimes with the sunsets used to be so beautiful. Like it was like, pink and orange
yeah,
sometimes. And yeah, I just don't, see as much of that anymore. And honestly, all of like Kolkata is already immune kind of, because we're a bit closer to the ocean, or like the sea, Arabian Sea, right?
yeah,
Which helps, right, compared to the more landlocked areas. Because I mean, Delhi, Gurgaon, those areas are just at one point it was like what 800 last year,
yep, yep,
and
yep,
like it just hurts my brain to even think about like a child living there and breathing that air. Like imagine
yep,
what it's doing to that body. So yeah, no, that's super interesting. And then in terms of what you said about like the extremely, diverse geographies, how do you cope with challenges from that? Like, obviously you need to have meetings, right, to get something figured out. And if the next date is just simply not even available for 2 days, somebody goes on leave, just
yep.
stuff breaks down. Like, do you have any thoughts on how, and this doesn't even necessarily has anything to do in particular with Tesla, right? Like I face this problem at my work.
Yeah,
So like, yeah, how does one deal with that type of thing? Do you have any like notes for that?
yeah. I think, I mean, for the unfortunately sounding a bit more rigid, but I think it at the end of the day, it's just flexibility, like how flexible. For me personally, I can say that, and not just like in Tesla or anywhere, or anywhere I do, like how I see work is like,
Hmm.
if something needs to get done, it needs to get done. I understand that different people like view this differently, but for me that's the case. It's like, as long as I can be flexible without it actually affecting my personal space and well-being, um, which is personal and not governed by some external rules, like that I need to work 9 to 5, and
Yeah.
that can be like what I want to say is like, someone can have their personal ethos of working, saying that I work only 9 to 5, right? um, Someone else can have a personal ethos of working 9 to 8, right? So the way I see it is that as long as it's not affecting your personal ethos of
Hmm.
what you see is acceptable and not, um, trying to be flexible goes a long way in solving some of these
Wow.
challenges. But I understand that's not how all organizations work, and how all individuals work, and I totally respect that, right? Also, uh, but you have to be comfortable in terms of the flexibility you're providing. Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
And or well, yeah. First of all, I love that call out, right? Because again, I think it just also speaks to, as you were saying, the culture of organizations where, yeah, like, why am I here to solve this problem? What is it going to take me logging in 2 hours after I'm supposed to have been logged out? Okay,
yeah,
sure, why not? Like, I'll do it. And I think that's just such a good call out, and I love that so much because think of how many times that can be the difference between a successful launch, a project well done, a project done on time, right, versus something that extended for 2 longer months just because somebody was like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm not doing
yeah,
that tonight.
yeah,
So it's so interesting in that way.
yeah. I think to a certain extent, all individuals like factor in the cost benefit of doing that.
Yeah.
Is their remuneration or job satisfaction equal to the cost of putting in those extra 2 hours? I think on a macro level, everyone's sort of doing that or complaining about that. So yeah, I think yeah, that goes a long way. I think that's a
Yeah.
interesting nugget. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know if
And
you
then
feel the same in
mhm.
in with what you. I mean, US works a bit differently, right? If you see the same amongst people as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say, and it's funny how, right? Because I see on Twitter and such how like Europe is the one that is projected to be, oh, we're taking August off, right? No work August or whatever.
Yeah,
Like, don't put any meetings on my calendar when for all of August, and I'm like,
yeah,
wow, okay. Um, but I think the thing that's still common, I would say, is that, well, firstly, yeah, the US, I would say, goes a little harder than the UK from what I've
Mm,
seen, just in terms of like the hustle culture. I don't know how you would describe it, but just as an atmosphere, yeah, it's not, obviously you're not expected to do that every day, right? No
yeah,
one's ever do, at least in my industry. I have not, that's not something I've seen. But I mean, yeah, I don't like, it's very similar to what you were saying. Basically, is that, a, is it happening every day? B, is there a real use for it? And C, is there like a, not a transactional, but yeah, either job satisfaction or um relevant remuneration? And if there is, then people just kind of do it. But in general, from my understanding, obviously I've never even been to Europe, let alone work there, although I have worked with European counterparts at my organization, which is a global organization as well. So from what they say, yeah, it's like way more, relaxed and chilled out from what it sounds like out there in Europe, which I don't know if you would agree with that.
I think I have seen sometimes it to be not just in Tesla but in general. Sometimes I think they really choose where they sprint as in like really dig in deep
Nice. Yep.
very well. Like I was saying, they have that personal ethos. Like in general, we also like everyone has that personal ethos that hey, I'm not gonna probably work 2 weeks in August, but I'm gonna double down. Um,
Mm.
when I come back. Not for all people, but I have seen a lot of people do that. Um, so I think sometimes I feel it's a little misfounded, the whole approach that in Europe people are chilling a lot. Um, but people do enjoy their freedom also. Europe
True,
is like
true.
yeah, it's like it's a continent of at least Western Europe. It's like the continent of great equalizer. It's like
Mm.
everyone's kind of equal. They're everyone's somewhere in the median, right? Without having to do something extraordinary. Whereas in India or I think US as well, it's so meritocratic. If you need to really excel to be median or above median, or that's the expectation, right? Um, so yeah, it's interesting in that regard. But I think Europeans do know how when to double down. At least some of the
Interesting.
some of the people for sure. Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah, and
Yeah.
definitely not something I was aware of. I was just like, you're just protected, so you
Yeah.
can do you can do whatever, and like the 10,000 million regulations will just protect you. No, I'm just
that
kidding.
that is tricky. That is tricky.
Right.
Sometimes there's a lot of red tape. That's true also.
Right, right. Again,
Yeah.
I don't know any of this. This is just random stuff I pick up mostly on
Yeah.
Twitter. And then so coming back, I guess. Obviously, we discussed about the pre-launch phase, and then similarly, would you be able to share anything about the actual launch, or after that, how like the reception has been? And obviously, I know there's been a few things said about the pricing, which you may or may not want to comment on. Totally up to you. And then even just other anecdotes, such as somebody was mentioning that cash on the site means something very different in India versus like the US, right? Because here, obviously, it implies that you're willing to pay, but in India, cash is like actual, like bundles of cash. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw that; it got kind of viral. So yeah, just kind of in this entire umbrella of things. Yeah, I guess what are you willing to speak to in terms of the post-launch
Yeah,
events?
sure. I mean, I can definitely not comment on any of those particulars, but what I will,
Ah, rats.
yeah, what I will tell you is that, and this is super, like, this was super moving to see, right? Firstly, like, I was in Mumbai, and I was flying back from Mumbai. So I have personally never seen this amount of media coverage for a brand in my life. I don't know if you have, right? Um,
Yeah, no, that rings true actually.
yeah,
It was crazy. It was just
it
crazy.
was it was crazy, and that made me so proud because of all the hard work that all the other teams have put in, right? uh, I feel it more. I feel the pride more because I look at it as a way that I'm bringing a solution, like I'm helping bring in a solution uh, to the country at the right time.
Right.
But for me, that was pretty much insane to like see. Like I remember I was taking a flight way later at night, and I was in the airport, and even then on the TV, like all the major news outlets were
Uh-huh.
covering this. Um, and everyone around me were actually talking about it. So I was going back in the flight, and there happened to be a cricketer on that flight, and I couldn't help but overhear that he was also discussing
No
yeah,
way.
like Tesla, yeah. It was sort of Ganguly actually. I don't need to
Oh,
gatekeep this. Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, he was essentially discussing about Tesla. So I mean, for me, it was really it was a
Oh,
really proud moment.
yeah,
To
that's
be a
so cool.
very small part in that in that overall
Hmm.
conversation. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, but it was super cool to see. I've never seen a country of 1.4 billion people talk about one thing so
One
unanimously.
thing, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
And then remind me, Supra, Tesla doesn't have offices in India currently, right? Like just for people outside of manufacturing and such, or do they?
no, there's local offices as well. That's also sort of a proud moment for yeah, for the country. That I mean, we obviously have, like, India obviously has like brilliant talent, right?
Absolutely,
um,
yeah.
so it's just a perfect synergy in general.
Right. And but when you were talking about like the pre-development stuff, was so the India team must have been involved with that as well. Like you would have gotten to work with them, right? Or were they
Yeah,
not as much involved? Okay.
no,
Got
I like I said, like everyone from pretty much uh yeah, like all the cross-functional teams, all the local teams, everyone was involved. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. What I'm trying to kind of building towards a little bit is, in my experience, I've also had to work with teams in India while I was in the US, and it's always such an interesting experience, right? Because you're obviously from there, but you're not on their team, and you're kind of
Hmm.
like in a different team. And I just think it's so interesting, and I actually don't know anyone else that does this. So yeah, I'm just going to ask you, how is that for you, and are there parts of it that you like, do not like? Just kind of, trying to get some open-ended thoughts on this piece of working with Indians as an Indian but not from India.
Yeah, I think what I can say is that, like as an individual, I think I have a few bits and parts to myself. being Indian and from India is a big part, right? Uh, and it's also like for example, I just feel closer to the people I'm working with because I share a lot of the cultural nuances with them, and it probably also happens when I work with French people now because
Yeah.
they
Oh,
like
yeah, for sure.
so like I used to work a lot with French people in my old role. Now also I do sometimes, and yeah, it's just that natural human uh, overlap of experiences that kind of helps you uh, yeah, connect with more people. I mean, people who have seen the world, I feel like, or have traveled internationally, I feel in general can connect with more people more easily, and I think that really facilitates when you work together because you need to be collaborative
Hmm.
and move towards a common objective. But um, yeah, so I think that was super cool for me as well. I mean, I've in my previous roles also I've worked with
Okay, okay,
uh,
nice.
people from India and working in India. Uh, but yeah, that was. I think that's what helps the
True.
collaboration a
Yeah,
bit more. Yeah, and
I love
unfortunately, I
that.
cannot share more details
No, no,
around
yeah,
this. Right? Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
completely, yeah,
yeah.
totally understand, of course. And then, yeah, really, last question here before I let you go. If there is an Indian international student that is watching this from anywhere in the world, or maybe even a prospective Indian international student, so maybe a student in India that's considering going out, building a life for themselves in a different country, and you can only share one piece of advice with them, what would that advice be?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a toughie. I think I think the answer is like leveraging AI. Uh, AI is going to be and is already, it just enables you to get so much leverage in the output work that you're
Yep.
doing. There is no way you cannot be a part of this if you want to be ideally contributing in a meaningful way to any society. Right? I feel, and this is only my personal thought. I feel like um, India might. I don't see as much as I hope in India in terms of like AI in general, like progress. Like we are still like glorifying logistics and operations companies, right? Like 10-minute
Right,
groceries,
right.
things like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or just
should our
GPT
my
rappers, you know.
or just GPT rappers? I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know a good GPT rapper from India. Also, I
Krutrim,
mean,
remember
okay,
Krutrim when that was
yeah,
a thing? Yeah, yeah.
Kutrim AI. I think,
And
yeah,
even
I
Ola had something, right? I think they were also. Wait, Krutim was Ola's, I guess.
Kutrim was
Eh,
Ola, right? Yeah, yeah.
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
I think they are in a bit of trouble. That's what I saw
Right, exactly.
some
Yeah.
stuff.
So
Yeah.
there, yeah, you're right. Like we aren't doing anything from the sounds of it.
Yeah, and that is concerning. But what I fear is in that move, stopped, have we like forgotten about maybe making things more packaged and more
Hmm.
like and things in a much more processed manner, um, which like stops us from sort of implementing AI solutions.
Right.
Sorry, I kind of digressed a bit. Sorry, I don't know what
No,
your thoughts
no,
are. I just want to take
no,
your
no. I
thoughts on this
think
also. Yeah.
I would agree with most of what you said. Actually, um, I love that. I love how relevant that advice is, right? Because there is no other time, I think, in history where that advice would have been relevant, right? Because when we were going out, there was no AI. We just
No.
Google things the old fashioned way. And
Yeah.
it's crazy to have to say that.
Yeah.
But that's where we are now, right? Like
Yeah.
now, when I'm trying to find information on the internet, my first decision point is, do I want to Google this or do I want to chat GPT this? Right.
Yeah.
And that itself I feel like is such a monumental shift that we've gone through in less than 2 years now,
Yeah.
right? And
Something that
then
has been around for 20 years, right? Like Google has been,
exactly,
yeah, it's,
exactly, and suddenly it's not even a sure shot. Like, do I want to
yeah.
Google this? I don't know, right? And then when you say that for an international student, I can, like, immediately when you said that, like, I thought of a million things that I would have saved thousands of hours doing if I could just use AI, like writing. I don't know. I used to write my own cover letters. Granted, they were usually mostly the same, and I would just replace like the company's name and their.
Yeah.
I used to quote their mission statements. I did
Mm,
used to replace those two things. but everything else was the same except I
Yeah.
hand wrote that. Why was I
Yeah.
handwriting this?
True.
And again, there is still a utility to doing that, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying that that's like a bad thing to do, but at least there's an option now, like, so that.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously I can think of dozens of things that immediately can be automated, made more efficient, etc. So I actually really like that call out, and it's not something that I've heard people say before, because people are normally like, oh, go out of your comfort zone. Like, okay, great. Thanks. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just love how relevant and actionable that is. So yeah, definitely agree with what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one way or the other is the future.
It's true. It's true. I am also definitely super bullish um on AI and where it's taking us. But yeah, Supra, thanks so much for taking the time. Truly been such a delight. I've learned so much. So many interesting nuggets around immigrant life, right? International student life, working in corporate Europe. Yeah, so many fascinating experiences that you've shared. Thank you for all the amazing work that you do for India and elsewhere, and all of the teams that help you to do that work. And yeah, truly been a delight. And I hope to have you back one day soon, maybe when there's a new big next launch, and that maybe hopefully you can talk about a little bit more freely. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. It really means a lot.
Yeah. No, well, Naman, thanks so much. I've never done something like this. It was super refreshing. The conversations I've had today, I probably had around like a few glasses of beers with my friends where we are discussing
Yep.
like life and philosophy. So I'm glad I could like kind of present that side of my personality as well, and not be like super interview like. So
uh
yeah, that was really cool. Thank you so much, Naman, for having me. Yeah, and until next time, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Cool.
That brings us to the end of that episode with Supratik Saha. I was just blown away by his incredible experiences while in Mumbai. It must have been so unreal to see that and to know that he played a part in all of that, right? That's probably the coolest part. If you would like to support me, random segue, but if you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing on YouTube and leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps. If you go tell a friend about how you found your new favorite podcast, that absolutely means the world to me. And please also leave a comment with any feedback or guest suggestions. Catch you all in the next one. New episodes every Wednesday.